Hi there, folks. Welcome back to Rich Reviews, my latest film for you guys here now. And this is called Mothering Sunday, and that is an actual thing in England. This has been slowly making its way across the film circuit. I think this premiered last year in Britain, and then this was going to be released, I think, in February of this year. Then it got pushed back to March. And this is based on a 2016 novella by Graham Swift. This is directed by Eva Husson, who is a French filmmaker. And this stars Odessa Young as Jane Fairchild. Now, let me just say that I happen to like sometimes British material because I think British material films sometimes are actually much more interesting than their American counterparts because, let's face it, there's never been a very big class distinction between here than it is in Britain, particularly at that turn of the decade. They still happen to have, hereditary peerage and whatnot, although, let's face it, sometimes prestige over there matters much more differently than here. And so, basically, this tells the story of Jane Fairchild, played by Odessa Young, and then this thing bookends with an older Jane, played by the great Glenda Jackson, who's been trying to be in stuff ever since she left Parliament back a couple of years ago. Now, basically, as played by Odessa Young, she is the maid given the day off by the Nivens, played by Colin Firth and Olivia Colman. Now, apparently this is the mid-20s, right after the war. Apparently the Nivens have lost all their children to the war, and they're still trying to put up that brave front, even though, quite frankly, there's something particularly brave about having to know that the fact that all your kids are dead. Now, the Olivia Colman character is very much a cynical person. Jane is given the day off because it's Mothering Sunday, and basically she goes to meet her lover, Paul, played by Josh O'Connor, and obviously, yes, it's a mini reunion of obviously Olivia Colman and Josh O'Connor from The Crown. And now with the Odessa Young character, there are three distinct time periods, one of whom is the first when she meets the Josh O'Connor character, then during their affair, and then her, apparently from what I learned in the reviews, during the 50s. Now, if that were true, then Odessa Young doesn't look good playing a mid-40-year-old. And apparently she has aspired to be a writer. And obviously this book ends with her, as Glenda Jackson, being a literary writer who has won numerous literary awards. After watching this film, I come to look up this synopsis on Wikipedia. This is basically pretty closely accurate to the novel or novella, depending on how you view it. Now, Paul, from apparently what we learned, has the last of his peers, although apparently, from what I've heard in reviews, that he has survivor's guilt. Now that is news to me because he doesn't look like one of those people that is plagued by survivor's guilt, although then again, Josh O'Connor has that face of, hey look, he was Prince Charles, now he's playing another good-looking guy who is going to become a lawyer, because that's what always attractive guys in the 20s do to make money, is become a lawyer. The girl he's supposed to marry is really nothing much of anything other than, hey look, I'm a nice little ornament to hang upon you all. Yes, this thing lingers. Now, if you think to yourself that is interesting towards you, that's fine. I don't fault you for that. Interesting scene in which basically Odessa Young, there's splendid nakedness when the camera lingers on that nakedness, but Odessa Young basically strolls through the Niven's house basically naked. Now, does Odessa Young look good naked? Yeah, sure. But as much as I admire this film, there's just this one nagging thing of that this film didn't move me. Now, this novel were to have been published maybe 20 to 30 years ago. This could easily have been a film, or the more accessible route for this would have been to be made into a multi-part episode on Masterpiece Theater. And I'll be honest, that is actually indeed a compliment. There's some really good stuff on Masterpiece Theater. Quite frankly, not everything is. Granted, yes, sometimes people don't gravitate towards Masterpiece Theater, but hey look, Masterpiece Theater has done some really good adaptations. And so therefore, folks,